Book for money has been thrown out the window, right? With inflation, shrinkflation, all of it hitting our wallets, things that used to make sense just don't anymore. So today we're going to get into it. We're going to look at 10 things that are probably no longer worth your hard-earned cash.
Have you ever had that moment where you look at your bank account and you're just like, where did it go? If you have, trust me, you are not alone. It's this feeling we all have right now that our money is just evaporating, and it turns out there are some very real, very specific reasons why.
And honestly, this slide gets to the heart of it. A few years ago, getting something delivered or grabbing a quick service felt like a nice, affordable little treat. But now, that convenience comes with an absolutely massive price tag. It's not just that things cost a little more, the entire game has changed.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to dive into what I call everyday spending traps. Then, we'll move on to the big stuff. Big buys, big regrets. After that, we'll uncover the sneaky stealth wealth killers. And finally, we'll pull back the curtain on the experience illusion. Let's do this.
First up, those everyday spending traps. You know what I'm talking about. These are the little purchases that feel like no big deal in the moment, but when you add them all up, they are literally the small leaks that can sink your financial ship.
So let's kick things off with a perfect example. Food delivery apps. I mean, remember when apps like DoorDash and Uber Eats first came out? They were amazing. They were practically paying us to use them just to get us hooked. Well, those days are long gone. Now that convenience means you're paying 30 to 40% more than if you just went to the restaurant. To really see this in action, let's do what I call the Chipotle burrito test.
Okay, so you open up the app, you find your burrito, and you see the price, $15.35. Seems straightforward, right? Wrong. What you don't realize is that price is already marked up. If you walked into that Chipotle, the same burrito would be $1 or $2 cheaper. The upcharge starts before you even think about delivery.
And here we go. This is the final bill. Once you stack on the delivery fee, the service fee, the taxes, and a decent tip, that $15 burrito has ballooned to $29. And that's if you don't even have one of those monthly subscriptions. It's crazy.
Just let that sink in for a second. You are paying more for the service of someone bringing you the food than for the actual food itself. That's not a small luxury anymore. That's a massive premium that for most of us just doesn't add up.
And it's not just the delivery apps. Fast food in general isn't the budget option it once was, not even close. I mean, when a McDonald's meal is creeping up to $14, you have to ask yourself, is this really a good deal? Especially when you can often get a much better, fresher meal from a local spot for basically the same price. The prices are getting closer, but the quality? Not so much.
Next on the list, upgrading that $1,000 plus phone every single year. You know, back in the day, every new iPhone felt like a revolution. It was a huge leap forward. But now, the changes are so tiny, so incremental. The difference between this year's model and last year's is something most of us would never even notice. Holding onto your phone for 3, even 4 years, that is the real power move now.
All right, so we've covered the little daily leaks. Now let's talk about the big-ticket items in our second category, big buys, big regrets. We're talking about those huge life purchases that have gotten so expensive they can go from being a milestone to a millstone around your neck.
Let's start with a brand new car. Because of soaring prices and high interest rates, the average monthly payment has hit $750. That is a huge chunk of money, and people are having to stretch their loans out to 7, even 8 years just to make the payment work, all for an asset that's losing value the second you drive it off the lot.
But here's the part that really blows my mind, the opportunity cost. What if you took that same $750 a month and invested it in a simple S&P 500 index fund instead? Over 30 years, that money could grow to over $1.1 million. That's the real price of that new car smell, $1 million.
And this one might sting a little, but the same tough math now applies to the classic starter home. You know, that first house you buy to start building wealth. Well, the numbers have totally flipped. It is now cheaper to rent than to own in every single major city. On average, if you have a mortgage, you're paying almost 37% more each month than a renter in a similar home. The dream is becoming a financial trap for a lot of people.
All right, for our third section, let's expose the stealth wealth killers. These are the invisible fees and terrible products that you might not even notice, but they are quietly and consistently sabotaging your ability to get ahead financially.
So, a perfect example is something called an actively managed mutual fund. The sales pitch sounds great, right? Some genius Wall Street manager is going to handpick all the best stocks just for you. But here's the catch. For that privilege, you pay them a much, much higher annual fee, sometimes over 1% of your entire investment every single year.
So do you get what you pay for? Well, let's look at a pretty famous example. The ARK Innovation ETF, a really well-known, expensive active fund, lost 40% of its value over 5 years. During that exact same time, a boring, low-cost S&P 500 index fund went up 66%. You are literally paying higher fees to lose money. It's wild.
And that example wasn't just a fluke. The data on this is just overwhelming. Over the last 2 decades, more than 90% of these expensive funds failed to beat their own simple benchmarks. You're paying for expertise that just doesn't deliver.
Another classic wealth killer? The extended warranty. Here's the deal with these. First, check your credit card benefits. A lot of them already give you an extra year of coverage for free. Second, the fine print on these warranties is famous for having a million loopholes. And third, they are just pure profit machines for retailers, designed to prey on your fear right after you've spent a lot of money. Just say no.
And, whether we're talking about a bad investment or a useless warranty, a lot of these things come back to this idea of spending on status. And this is so important. In today's world, the difference between having a solid financial foundation and being totally broke can be just a few $100s a month. The margin for error is that thin.
Okay, for our fourth and final section, let's talk about the experience illusion. We're all told, buy experiences, not things, right? But what happens when the cost of living your best life has just gone through the roof?
I mean, just look at the wellness industry. It's a $7 trillion giant selling us $25 smoothies and $300 yoga pants, all promising some kind of shortcut to happiness. But you know what the real secrets are? They're boring and they are totally free. Get enough sleep, drink water, go for a walk, and eat real food.
And concerts? Oh my gosh, don't get me started. You see a ticket for $200 and by the time you check out, it's somehow $275. Why? Because you get hit with this absolute storm of fees. There's a service fee, a processing fee, a facility fee, and my personal favorite, a delivery fee for a digital ticket that they email to you. It's absurd, and it's making a fun night out feel like a 5-star luxury expense.
So as we wrap this all up, I want to leave you with one really powerful question to ask yourself before your next purchase, big or small. Just ask, would I still want this if no one else could ever see it? If the answer is yes, then great. At least you know you're buying it for you and not for anyone else. And that right there is the first real step to taking back control of your money.